One of the most important questions people frequently ask about the two main creations of ancient Greece, democracy and philosophy, is how did the two interact, or where did they interact? In other words, how did the opinions and teachings of philosophers affect the Athenian government and the creation of democracy? However, before answering these questions, we must create a basic and common understanding of who were the Sophists, the lovers and practitioners of philosophy in ancient Greece, and also what is philosophy. The Sophists derived from the Greek word for Sophia, which means wisdom, were in general individuals who exercised knowledge and learning. In other words, they were experts in their branches of study. For example, Pythagoras of Samos in mathematics, Thales of Miletus in astronomy, and Democritus in metaphysics. However, in ancient Greece in the 5th century BCE, the word was associated with a new type of intellectual, a professional teacher who traveled the Greek world offering instruction in a wide range of subjects, with special emphasis on public speaking and living a balanced life. I'm General Elias, and this is Historicity, a channel in which we keep a record of the constant called time, the good and the bad, in hopes of learning not to repeat the mistakes of the past. The emergence of this new profession, the Sophists, was the result of the increasing wealth and sophistication of Greek city-states, especially Athens, which demanded higher educational standards beyond the basic understanding of arithmetic, reading, music, and physical education. The expansion of democracy too, especially in Athens, and the demand for success in the public arena now bestowed upon the regular citizen, prompted many to employ these wandering masters in order for them to learn and develop specialized techniques of persuasion and argument. With time, these wandering teachers would challenge everything that was known in the ancient world. They would use logic and reason to investigate the natural world, human society, and morality. In understanding the Sophists of ancient Greece, it is important to emphasize the individualistic nature of the profession. They did not belong to a particular organization, they did not belong to a specific group or institution, and didn't share common beliefs. Instead, the thing that seems to unite them is just the fact that they based their philosophies on two simple assumptions. Number one, that the universe, the land, the sky, and the sea, and even us, are put together in an orderly way and are subject to absolute and unchanging laws. And number two, that people can understand these laws, and hence the universe and ourselves, through logic and reason. A key figure and one of the first Sophists was Protagoras. As a matter of fact, he is credited by Plato with inventing the role of the professional sophist. And he even states that while the activity of sophistry has been practiced by poets and experts since ancient times, Protagoras was the first person to have openly declared himself a sophist and claimed to teach to achieve success in life. Among Protagoras' great achievements is having taught Pericles, the great Athenian commander who would make of Athens an empire and would guide it towards becoming a more perfect democracy. Plutarch states that Pericles and Protagoras would spend days discussing a single point. He is also credited with having brought about a major controversy for having said that man is the measure of all things, of the things that are that they are, of the things that are not that they are not. A statement which Plato took to mean that there is no absolute truth, but that which individuals deem to be true. You see, Protagoras promoted a philosophy that came to be known as relativism, which basically states that on any matter there are two arguments opposed to one another. For he was a teacher of rhetoric and argumentation. He was a teacher of debate. To us, this is common sense nowadays, but to the ancient Greeks, there was only two sides to things in public life: absolute truths and lies. And no self-respecting adult would dare lie in public. You could lose your honor, you could lose your life for that. For example, if you take into account how Solon reacted to watching the first performance of a tragedy by Thespis around the year 563 BCE, you will realize how not used to fictional performances the Greeks of antiquity actually were. After the play was done, he basically heckled the playwright and shouted, "Are you not ashamed of saying so many lies in front of so many people?" To which Thespis replies something along the lines of, "It's only a play. If you do it for a play, lying, it's okay." Solon, being one of the 7 wise men of antiquity, replied, "Aye, if we honor and applaud such lies as these, soon we shall find them in our business or in our contracts. In other words, soon people will start using them in public life and in the public arena." Which is exactly what Pericles kind of did his entire life. Relativism basically says that in any argument, it all depends on how you look at things. Your position in an argument is relative to your experience and where you are coming from. An example of that was presented by Pericles himself, the great student of Protagoras. When confronted by Thucydides, one of his greatest opponents in the year 443 BCE, for having spent the funds that all the city-states that were members of the Delian League had stored in the treasury of Athens, he spent that money, which was meant for the defense of all the city-states from Persia, building the Acropolis, the Parthenon, and all the beautiful temples that we know Athens for today. And didn't even consider that that money wasn't really his. It wasn't really Athens. Well, when confronted by Thucydides, who asked him in public in the Ecclesia, "Don't you think it's amoral to spend money meant for the common defense of all the city-states on just our city, the city of Athens?" Pericles replied, "As long as we provide for the defense from Persia, none of the other city-states should be concerned with how or if we spend the money." Another time, when put against the ropes for having spent too much money building the Acropolis, quantities that had truly enraged the crowd against Pericles, he simply replied to the masses, "If you want to, I can give you a refund back for all your money out of my own pocket." You see, Pericles was incredibly wealthy. He continued, "And in place of having the city's name inscribed on all the buildings, we can just place mine instead." Let's just say that just because of his argument, everyone attending that meeting left satisfied with Pericles spending as much as he was, since he was elevating the name of the city-state instead of his own. And Thucydides, the man who was arguing for morality, the man who was arguing for austerity and respectful spending, was ostracized and kicked out of Athens for 10 years. That's how powerful relativism as a political tool and how powerful philosophy and the teachings of the Sophists actually were. Learning from them meant failure or success in public life. And now that Athens was a democracy, a government by the people, and every citizen was expected to participate in public life, no one wanted to look a fool. An individual who was watching Pericles and Protagoras in Athens within that time period, the 440s and 430s BCE, would eventually become the primary and most influential philosopher among them. His name was Socrates. Now, Socrates motivated his students to examine their most closely held beliefs. He would use a question and answer approach to break down and understand any topic at its most basic level, an approach that came to be known as the Socratic method. Not much is known about his life, as he didn't leave any writings behind. The few things we do know for certain, however, are because they were written down by his student Plato and Xenophon in the writings that came to be known as the Socratic dialogues. So, what are some of the things we do know for certain about Socrates? For starters, the fact that he was very, very ugly, at least in his later years. But the reality stands that if you end up being so ugly that that's the first thing that they mention about you in history, it's because quite possibly you started that way. We also know that he wore disheveled clothing and walked around the city barefooted, something which is mentioned in the play The Clouds by Aristophanes, his contemporary. Finally, we do know how he died. he was executed by the men of his beloved city by being forced to drink hemlock, a poison, for criticizing the political and moral standing of Athens during the reign of the 30 tyrants, for criticizing democracy as a form of government, and for praising Sparta, Athens' archenemy and rival. Officially, he would be found guilty in 399 BCE of corrupting the minds of the youth of Athens and impiety, or not believing in the gods of the state. Famously, as he lay dying, it is said by Plato that he stated that all philosophy is training for death. His student Plato, one of the greatest philosophers to ever live in his own right, would create the first school of philosophy in the Western world, the Academy, in 387 BCE. And one of Plato's students, Aristotle, a man who would spend 20 years in the Academy, later founded a school of his own, the Lyceum. And little by little, this idea of providing an education to the youth would become accepted worldwide in the form of the high school and the universities we know today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and click the bell so that every time that there's a new video, you can be immediately informed. Also, come on, subscribe if you haven't already. I'm General Elias, and this is history.